obviously had an opportunity to get back at home, play in front of our home crowd. We've had tremendous environments here and support throughout the season, and obviously expect another great crowd here as we get a chance to honor the 1998 SEC West Division Championship team. We even got one of the former players works in our building still, Rod Gibson, in recruiting. I also believe Coach Jackie Sherrill's going to be back here with the team. As someone who's been extremely kind to me and offered me many words of wisdom and advice being a head coach here at Mississippi State. So excited to see him back here and excited to see that team get honored. I know we're wearing special throwback uniforms, matching what they wore that season. Obviously, have a tremendous opponent coming in here, Kentucky. You know, coming off a stretch here where they've played about as difficult a 3-game stretch as I bet you any team in the country, and playing, you know, number 1, number 14, and number 19 ranked teams in the AP poll. I cannot say enough about Coach Stoops, what he's accomplished there, the respect and admiration I have for their program. I mean, they know exactly who they are. They're physical, incredibly fundamentally sound. Running back, leading the league in rushing, just about 103 yards a game. He is as electric of a back that I've seen all year. He is as explosive of a runner that Will faced up to this point. Quarterback's coming off a tremendous game. Leary, obviously, we faced him once already when he was at North Carolina State. I mean, he's got a big arm. He can make all the throws. They got really talented guys on the outside. And then they've consistently every year been at in the upper echelon of the league defensively. Fundamentally sound, play with tremendous effort, physical, and so we know we got a heck of a football team coming in here. Like I said, respect everything they're about and the way they play the game. So it should be a great matchup. Hopefully we have a great environment here. Again, we're honoring the 98 West Division champs, and so should be a tremendous environment. Should have great support here. With that, I'll open up for questions.
Coach, after reviewing the film outside of the outcome itself, what were you most disappointed with in Saturday's effort?
I was obviously go both sides of the ball there. I mean, defensively, disappointed with the execution in the first half. Then obviously got shredded pretty good. I think they had 300 yards offense in the first half and just never really got off the field other than maybe one drive where we had them, special teams pin them down there, you know, inside the 15, and I think we did get a 3-and-out there. So didn't execute well enough in the first half. Let the game get away from us too much, and then by the time we started really turning on and playing pretty good, the game was too far out of hand, and time becomes your biggest enemy. Then offensively, you know, when you're without your starting quarterback and starting tailback, you know, points are going to be a little tougher to come by. But either way, you get trips inside the red zone, you got to find a way to come away with touchdowns. It's very difficult to win in today's game of football, kicking field goals. Obviously, that takes a special defensive performance, and we were not playing that well on Saturday. And so you got to find a way. You got to find a way to convert red zone trips into touchdowns.
John,
do you think there's any chance we could see Chris Parson at quarterback?
Yeah, I think there's a chance.
Do you think like he could maybe start over Mike Wright if Will was out, or do you think it would still be Mike Wright in that event?
I think it's Monday, and I don't think it's in my best interest to talk about you know, all the specifics of the game plan.
I believe on your radio show a couple weeks ago when Dick Buckus died, you had mentioned showing the team film of him just for motivation or whatever. I'm just curious if you were planning on dusting off any highlight tapes of the '98 team.
I didn't
this week at all.
I don't think I actually showed any film. You know, it was all over TV that day and social media, obviously, for obvious reasons. What a great player he was. Yeah, we may. Again, with Rod Gibson being in the building every day, probably give him an opportunity to, you know, talk about that team or something. But obviously, first and foremost, number one job is just making sure we're preparing for what is needed to be done and covered to be prepared to play our best this week. You would hope, though, you would hope your guys want to play well and put on their best performance when you got a lot of them greats coming back and one of the best teams in school history.
Coach's series with Kentucky's been kind of favoring the home team here the last several years. What
So
makes
it
it
continues.
so, what makes it so difficult to, number one, play in Lexington, but also too for opponents to come in here and get out of here with a win?
Well, I think both places got great environments, great support from their respective fan bases. You know, it's always tougher to play on the road because you have to deal with crowd noise and potential distractions and everything that just comes with traveling. But at the end of the day, game of football comes down to execution, right? And which team executes the best and puts together a full game for 4 quarters in 60 minutes. And so hopefully we're prepared to do that.
Anything else?
What'd you think of Xavion last week, and how have you kind of seen him grow?
I think I said post game. I think he was certainly on our team the most explosive player with the ball in his hands on Saturday. I know he had over 100 yards receiving. I think 9 catches for something like 112. I think was right around there. You know, first play of the game was a tremendous catch there to get that on, you know, outstretched arms and get his toe down there for completion. I thought we had some really creative ways of getting him the football. You know, and not everyone was just on drop back pass or play action. There was a couple in there from some unique alignments. These, you know, kind of diverting to Kentucky a little bit, but they do a tremendous job of finding unique formations, splits, ways to get their guys the ball. I think that's what you saw in our game plan to Xavion, and obviously that'll be a big emphasis, you know, the rest of the years. When you only get so many snaps, well, the way the clock rules are kind of working out this year, depending on how your opponent plays too. Certain games, you don't get as many snaps as the other, right? And when you find yourself in a game where, you know, 60 to 65 snaps and a little bit more limited possessions, you want to make sure you maximize every single one you can and get the ball in your most explosive player's hands. And so he's obviously proven to be one of our most explosive guys with the ball in his hand. Obviously, it's no surprise. You see that the way he returns punts. I mean, even going back to last year. And so we're going to continue to find creative ways to get him his touches.
There's a report yesterday that Auburn knew y'all's signs. Do you think that was happening, or what are your thoughts on that?
What side of the ball are you talking about?
Offense.
I mean, if my recollection serves me right, I think in the first half, we had 122 total yards of offense, and that's 4.9 yards of play. In the second half, we had 223 yards of offense, 5.9 yards per play. 75, 76 rushing yards in the first half, 108 rushing yards in the second half. I guess I would have to let you come to your own conclusions and determinations from that report. I tend to hide, but the facts, you know, speak for themselves.
Joe, you mentioned talking to Coach Sherrill, and through the years, your defensive style's kind of been connected with Joe Lee Dunn. I know that you probably don't have just a ton of time to sit around and think about it, but is it going to be pretty cool to you coach a team that's wearing that interlocking MSU on their helmet and things, and kind of see some of the things that are connected to yourself?
Oh, it's special to me just to get coach at this university. You know, I've had an opportunity to be around Coach Sherrill a couple times, and so you know, had opportunities to sit and listen to him speak about what it's like coaching here, try to soak up any advice I can get. I certainly hope we play to our maximum ability. If the uniform that we're in contributes to that in any way, then let's wear that uniform every game here on out. But you know, yeah, I probably don't think philosophically or existentially enough to maybe go too deep down that wormhole and make something more of it than it really is. We got a football game. It's the most important game on our schedule because it's the one we get to play this week. Let's make sure we maximize every opportunity as a football program to do everything we can to control what we can control to make sure we show up as best prepared as possible.
Coach, I'm sure when you sat down at the beginning of the year, you wanted to formulate an identity for this team, and maybe where do you feel like maybe you've come up short, maybe realizing your vision with this team? What are you lacking at this point, I guess, would be the better question.
I mean, you want to win every game, obviously. I would like, depending on injuries and things like that, those are always going to affect what you can do schematically from time to time, and every team in the country is dealing with that. You really want your identity to be how hard you play, how physical you play the game, how fundamentally sound or playing with proper technique and fundamentals. And so, I believe we compete and play hard for the most part. I think we can play harder. I don't shy away from that, right? Your job as a coach obviously is to, teach them the proper fundamentals, techniques, employ the right scheme, X's and O's, but it's also to push the right buttons that you show up with a football team who is emotionally ready to play and compete. That's your responsibility. And so, by all means, I am a believer in the Truman, the buck stops here. I'm responsible for everything. And so, there's no greater critic of myself or our program than myself. And we got 4 more games in front of us. And if we show up every game ready to compete and play with maximum effort, and we make sure we have a good game plan ready for them, then we'll give ourselves a chance to win every single one of those games.
You guys had that tough stretch, obviously, in September, the 3 losses. Just how much confidence do you have in the leaders of this team and this team to kind of not let one loss against Auburn kind of linger and start, another losing skid here down the stretch?
If they were able to, deal with the adversity of 3 losses and come back and string together 2 wins, then I guess coming off 1 loss it's not going to be so traumatic to their, psyches. I mean, these are big boys, right? They don't need to be coddled. They know what it means to put in a week of work and go out and play. And if you lose, you lose. And guess what? You got to move on to the next one. And so, no, I'm not worried about our psyche or our. Yeah, I guess that'd be the right. Psyche would be the right word. I think that's what you're leading to.
Dang.
Coach, Seth Davis has got more opportunities as a freshman, especially with Woody banged up. Just talk about his progression. I know him coming in early helped.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Obviously, early enrollee gives him a chance to get into the offensive system over spring. He was probably the most consistent performer and the guy who opened our eyes the most in spring practice, just from his performance day in and day out and what he could bring to the run game. Like you said, has gotten some increased carries and opportunities because of Woody being unavailable, and has taken advantage of those opportunities. Got out in the open, split along when they're in the last game, and has done some really nice things. He brings a little bit of a feature too, getting the ball out of his hands out of the backfield in the pass game, and so we're really excited about his development and look forward to his further improvement.
Coach, you mentioned after the game on Saturday about a lack of intensity coming out and just struggles to put a complete game with 4 quarters together. Have you noticed any disconnect between trying out dynamic plays in practice and then being able to execute them on game day?
I don't know. Offensively, they opened up the first play was a dynamic, explosive pass play, right? So, no, I don't think. Maybe I said this to the team last week, so I'll say it here. I think there's 3 ways you prepare for a football game, right? Obviously, you prepare mentally. Right? That's what all the time in the film room and studying your opponent is all about, and getting into your game plan so you know exactly what your keys are, where your eyes are supposed to be. Right? You have to prepare mentally for a game, so where you're not thinking while you're playing. Right? By that point, you've done all the preparation, now you're just letting your natural instincts play. Because you know exactly where you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to be looking at, how you're supposed to react accordingly, right? So you prepare mentally. Obviously, you prepare physically. Right? Football is a physical game, and you have to use the proper techniques and fundamentals and put your body in the right positions in order to be successful, because your opponent is doing the exact same thing. And oftentimes, right, success or failure on a play comes down to who physically outmans the other. Right? So you have to prepare mentally and physically for a football game. Then I believe you have to prepare emotionally for a football game, right? You only get 12 of these opportunities, right? They're incredibly important. Right? You have to get yourself worked up into a state that, different than practice. And so, and sometimes you can, coaches and players, when you watch film, you can see a team who is emotionally jacked up to play, and you see times on film where it doesn't look that way. And so I try to encourage all of our players that all three aspects that I just mentioned, you have to spend the week preparing in all of those ways if you're going to be the best player you can be and play at your maximum capability. Right? There's what your natural talent is capable of, and then there's what you are actually capable of, which is always a little bit more. And that comes down to more than just physical ability. And so I think that's more what I was referencing.
Anything else?
There you go, Hail State, thank you guys.